In this lesson, we're going to take a look at types of complex sentences that you can use for IELTS speaking, specifically using phrases such as even though and even if. Okay, a quick review of complex sentences. As we know, we need to use a range of sentence structures in our IELTS speaking test. That's in order to get those band scores above 6 or higher. Complex sentences are super important for this. And complex sentences basically are a mix of an independent clause and a dependent clause. There can be multiple examples of each clause type within a full sentence. So you can have an independent clause together with two dependent clauses, or that can be interchangeable. There can be any number of mixes of these clauses. How many clauses can you see in the example sentence below? Let's read through together. Despite revolutionizing communication, smartphones have led to a decline in face-to-face interactions as people often find themselves engrossed in screens, even in the presence of others. So if you like, you can pause the video now. How many independent clauses and dependent clauses can you see in the example sentence here? Okay, I'm assuming you have your answer, and there are in fact two dependent clauses, and we have a complete independent clause embedded in the middle of this sentence. This isn't an embedded clause sentence. This is just an example of dependent clauses and independent clauses used within the same sentence. Okay, so let's move on to take a look at these really useful phrases that can help us open and use dependent clauses. And that is even though and even if. So even though is used to introduce a contrast, difference, or also to show compromise or a change in your thinking. Let's take a look at 4 examples. Even though I live in a bustling city, I prefer the tranquility of the countryside for weekend getaways. So this is obviously IELTS example talking about where we live, our hometown, or even holidays possibly. This sentence opens with a dependent clause. Even though I live in a bustling city, I prefer the tranquility of the countryside. So showing contrast here. My English proficiency has improved significantly, even though I haven't had the chance to live in an English-speaking country. So in this example, we can see that we can also use even though within the middle of our sentence structures too. Even though I enjoy trying different cuisines, my go-to comfort food will always be my mum's homemade lasagna. Even though technology has made communication faster, I believe face-to-face conversations are still essential for building strong relationships. Okay, even though, so a really useful phrase for opening a dependent clause and also showing contrast, differences and compromise. Let's take a look at the use of even if. It's quite similar in use. We use even if to introduce a hypothetical or imagined condition. So it's more for conditional or imagined events in the future. Even if the weather is unfavourable, I'm determined to attend the outdoor concert this coming weekend. I would pursue my passion for art, even if it meant taking a less lucrative job and making less money. Even if you disagree with my opinion, I believe it's essential to have open discussions on controversial topics. And our last example of even if to talk about imagined situations. I'll participate in the marathon even if I don't win. The experience and challenge are important to me. So here we have this last example. We'll quickly break this down as it adds a semicolon to really give another independent clause. I'll participate in the marathon is an independent clause. Even if I don't win is dependent clause. And then we follow on with an independent clause. The experience and challenge are important to me. Okay, just a bit of a breakdown there of an interesting sentence structure using a few different clauses. That brings us to the end of this lesson, and I hope that you've really started to develop your understanding of using dependent clauses and more complex structures.